So, spawning down in the bottom right hand position of Heavy Rain. It's the red Protoss player representing FM Esports, Boombox. And his opponent, to the top left, the green Terran representing Myth, Distan. Myth, of course, stands for Mythology Gaming. They are a very, very cool team. So, excited to see what's going to be going on here. Distan, for the moment, just putting a supply depot a little bit out of the way there. So, just hiding that off to the corner. The things Distan should be very aware of is this huge amount of cliff area around his main base. Now, that cliff area does one thing. It makes Blink Stalkers exceptionally effective. A Blink Stalker all-in can be devastating to a Terran player because it's not even like two bunkers can defend this off easily. There's just so much space that can be used. It's incredibly challenging to try and hold off aggression and pressure that comes in the form of Blink Stalkers. Other things to be keeping an eye out for are proxy Stargates. Really good strategy to go for on this map. Of course, you can proxy a Stargate here, fly over the top with an Oracle, and be in the main base of your opponent exceptionally quickly. And that can be a little bit annoying to try and deal with. As we can see, both players just starting off nice and early, should be staying at similar levels of worker count throughout this game. But for the most part, nothing too scary is really going on for now. Boombox, he's just got the single gas, 3 probes in there, so isn't rushing out tech. If we'd seen the second assimilator also with 3 probes in it, we would expect slightly earlier tech and a quick rush into tech maybe. But Boombox, he's just playing it pretty standard. Meanwhile, Distan, he's got the 1 gas and is producing a single Reaper. Reapers as well are going to be very strong on this map. There's a huge amount of cliff area, so they can benefit from that. They can poke and prod against the Protoss player very effectively. And the only way a Protoss player can stop that is once they have either a Stalker or a Mothership core out. Preferably both, and that will stop probes starting to die. But until that point, Reapers can pretty much have free reign over a Protoss player's base, potentially starting to pick away at workers very quickly and very easily. So, just waiting now for the Reaper to just come on in, trying to find nice little ways to poke and prod. The Stalker, though, is being kind of boosted out. Boombox has already identified that this is going to be a Reaper expand because he's seen the refinery, knows the barracks is there, knows the timings, and should be fine defending it. The Stalker even positioning itself by the edge of the cliff, just ready for the Reaper to come up and in. Sees it very nice and early, can start chipping away at it already, and Distan is going to have a bit more of a tough time trying to actually deal any damage with this. Boombox, just as expected, is also throwing down the Twilight Council. Unless he goes into a Dark Shrine, which would be slightly against the current meta on this map for Protoss players, it's going to be Blink. And for all the reasons that I previously mentioned at the start of this game, Blink is really effective on this map. And it's something that Distan really needs to find out. There we go, it has started in production. The trouble for Distan as well is that if he spends a scan, he may not scan right at the back of the main. And that's the other problem with this map for Terran players, is because the main base is so large, a scan can't easily identify what tech a Protoss player is going for early enough to try and stop it. So if you don't get that first scouting Reaper in and get the information you need, it can cause you quite a few problems. So a Stalker already now starting to work away at this Reaper. The Reaper getting very low on HP, only 12 HP remaining there, and has to back away. A Lone Marine just checking around, making sure nothing too fishy is going on, making sure there's no proxied anythings. There is a proxy pylon coming down over to the right of the 3rd base of Distan. The Reaper dies as well, so no more scouting information going to be coming out. Concussive Shell, though, is already on its way through. The bunker being brought back, and this is maybe just some good thought processes coming down from Distan. He's seen 2 Stalkers out on the map, he knows Heavy Rain is a great map for Blink Stalker all-ins, and therefore is just going to be playing it safe. This should put him in a good position to be able to defend against this. He's got all the tools required to actually stop it. But as you can see, this bunker, quite a long way away. If Boombox blinks up onto the right here, he can still come round and start chipping away at workers, making those bunkers absolutely useless. The Mothership core at the moment just going to come and take a little peek in, sees 1 bunker there, backs out to safety. A lot of Stalkers have now been seen. Blink is about to finish up. There we go. And with all of this, we just need to keep a real close eye on exactly where Boombox tries to move forward. If he doesn't deal any damage, he's a long way behind on his natural base. While it hasn't been taken yet by Distan, he's still producing those SCVs, and he still has, obviously, the mules available. The Mothership Core is getting very low on health. They're going to have to spend energy on that Time Warp to prevent it being killed. This allows the Stalkers to come up onto the high ground, where they'll be able to take down a supply depot. That instantly supply blocks Distan, who only just now restarts another one. The Blink Stalkers also up in the main, but Concussive Shells doing a good job of holding them back. The Stalkers backing on out, trying to get some damage done. One Stalker dies though in the process, and that isn't ideal for Boombox, who's down at the moment by 2 workers. And with the mules as well, that gives Distan an amazingly good income compared to that of his opponent, especially when Distan feels safe enough to move that Orbit Command to his natural base. For the moment though, the aggression and pressure hasn't subsided yet from Boombox. He's moving up again, needs to get some more work done, needs to be trying to pick off as much as he can early on to basically make this opening worthwhile. And as we can see from the resources lost, he's doing a fairly good job of it for the moment, killing about 6 times more stuff than that of his opponent. But the real beauty are these DTs that have come in from behind. A scan has just been spent now over the natural base to see that's coming, and that means there isn't enough energy for another scan, nor is there a missile turret yet. The Stalkers have been a great distraction, and in comes this Dark Templar now, gonna start chipping away, and because of the lack of any form of detection or a scan there, it's not going to be able to do much. There was a scan of the natural base, and that's actually a slight slip up from Boombox. He should have blocked that Orbit Command from landing with the Dark Templar, but wasn't able to do so. So this DT, the second DT, is also going to die as another scan goes through, and Boombox is probably going to be quite disappointed with how that went, because missile turrets will have plenty of time to be constructed now, and it's unlikely that those Dark Templar are going to get any more damage done. Another DT, now moving up, just going to start chipping away at a couple of Marines there. Boombox playing a very harassment-heavy style, but if he's able to take down this Orbit Command, that's going to be a big win for him. This Dark Templar getting some nice work done, killing off the odd infantry unit, but he's got to be very cautious not to move too close to that missile turret where it would get taken out. Another scan being used. This is already costing a lot of immediate income from Distan, because he's spent a considerable amount of energy from his Orbit Commands scanning. And the problem with that is when he spends so much energy scanning, he then doesn't have the energy for mules. Missile turret is now finished at the front, so that Dark Templar not going to do any much. And another small slip up from Distan, I don't know if he's realised, is that his Orbit Command is 1 cell too far to the right. That means that he's slightly further away from these mineral patches than is optimal. Boombox behind this, adding in charge. He's also adding in the +1 armor upgrades, and has got a couple of Archons in place. So he's just going to go fairly heavy into Archons as his main damage dealer. He's also getting down the Templar Archives ready for Storm. Meanwhile, Distan, he's up. Well, he's not up, he's probably quite similar in income. Now he's got a couple of mules down to that of Boombox and the work account, so we can see that their mineral income fairly similar, just slight advantage for Boombox there. But Distan, he's very late in his tech. Stim is finished. Combat Shield is not though, nor is his starport yet completed. And without a starport, he doesn't have any medevacs. The infantry is incredibly vulnerable and has to be exceptionally careful in ways of how many stims are used and when stims are used, because there's no way to recover the HP lost from doing so. Meanwhile, Boombox, his tech's actually looking fairly solid. He's already got Storm researching, he's got Blink, he's got Charge, and he's got an upgrade lead. He needs to continue building that though, making sure that he really utilises the pretty level economy that he's got at the moment, but more importantly utilises the early aggression that he really dealt to the Terran player in order to try and get a solid lead going into the later game. Distan though, he's going for a very greedy approach himself, adding in a command center at the third base, a DT forcing another scan there, but the command center coming down is a bold move. It has been scouted now, so Boombox has his own third Nexus in production, but very macro orientated play from both of these players at the moment. A Dark Templar going to sneak on in there, pick off the SCV constructing the command center, adding a couple of seconds delay. Not the worst thing in the world, but still a good amount of damage being done, and it's a little bump in the build that Distan really wouldn't have wanted. So, keeping a close eye on things, you'll note that there's only 2 medevacs down, and they haven't actually been rallied to the main army. This is where Distan needs to really start focusing on just the fundamentals of his play to make sure that he's getting good production cycles out of that starport, he's got enough money to do so, and that he's keeping this army looking steady and strong. Because with Storm now completed, with High Templar probably soon to hit the field, already hit the field, a couple of good Storms with only 2 medevacs is not going to do too well. It's going to deal like tons of damage, the infantry will get taken out exceptionally fast, and there won't be much Distan can do about it. Now, Distan does have a couple of drops coming through, some Zealots being able to scout the top drop, but I'm not sure if there's anything really here for Boombox other than this Observer to actually see that there's a second drop coming in. So, Boombox, he's about to get stressed in his multitasking. Is he going to be able to defend all of this? Well, for the start, he's forced back one of those medevacs. So, the pylon gonna perhaps be a little bit of a red herring that, okay, this drop's come back, I'm safe. When actually, it's a drop coming into the main. But with that Observer, instantly seen, Photon Overcharge goes down, and yeah, quick warping of units, and straight away, things are looking pretty damn good for Boombox at defending this drop. The medevac is gonna die. The drop gets completely taken out, no workers were killed, and overall in the resources lost, the army trades have been relatively similar. But losing that medevac, when there's only 5 now on the field, is actually a fairly big hit, and not something that Distan really wants to deal with, especially when we factor in the fact that Distan does not yet have a Ghost Academy, and as a result, he has no way to deal with the High Templar, and no real good way either to deal with these Archons. When we've already got the double Colossus production coming down from Boombox, we're suddenly getting Distan falling very far behind in the army composition. We need to see him get out at least a couple of Ghosts and also some Vikings, because otherwise he's not going to have the units needed to combat what Boombox is building towards. So again, Boombox getting a nice little scout down there with a single lone probe. Should have been able to see those 2 medevacs, and if he didn't see it there, the pylon to the right certainly will. So, as long as he sees this coming through, Boombox should be able to defend it. Waiting to see if he moves his army at all in order to get through. Just Photon Overcharging, defend against the double drop trying to come into the main base. Not going to take any damage from there. Meanwhile, the double drop headed towards the natural, just dropping down a little bit early due to this nice photon cannon defense. It's not going to be successful in getting in. So, all in all, I'd say this is a fairly balanced game still, but Boombox is definitely starting to get a pretty comfortable lead in terms of the tech and army composition. Their economies, though, are very similar, and that's why they're both doing a really good job of just keeping that up. Boombox, he's again having to struggle with a little bit of a drop play coming through. It's getting cleaned up nicely just because of these photon cannons, but yeah, that wasn't ideal for Distan. He didn't really want to lose a medevac full of units. It's a big loss. In the main base though, he's going to try and get a bit more success. Double drop coming down will take out a pylon, but with the photon overcharge and now the Colossi coming back, those medevacs are going to have to retreat. One gets taken down, and it's not really ideal losing that there. So this is overall been some very nice trades for Boombox, and while he's only lost about 700 less resources than his opponent, he has got pretty much the ideal late game composition. A decent number of High Templar, a decent number of Colossi, and a good amount of gateway support for them. However, over a distance base, he's now going into not a panic mode, but a bit of a rush mode to try and make sure that he's able to produce enough Vikings. That double starport coming through, as well as the 4th command center. Whereas Boombox actually is going to be mixing things up as he starts up 3 Stargates simultaneously. So, with 3 Stargates coming through, that's some very nice times for Mr. Boombox. He's going to be switching up his tech, adding in the +1 air weapons, transitioning into a Skytoss style play here. Meanwhile, the triple Viking production is going to be coming out. Could actually go up to quad Vikings as the 3rd Stargate there, one of which where the reactor gets to work. So those Colossi not going to be in such a happy place. A fleet beacon also being produced now by Boombox, who's playing this very much for the late game at the moment. And yeah, we need to just really see what we're going to be getting from these players, because Distan, if he allows Boombox just to sit back and build whatever the hell he wants, he's going to be up against a very scary army. And actually, Distan is doing really well in terms of upgrades. He's about to have 2-2 done up against the 3-0 upgrades of Boombox. That gives him an advantage, and he's got the right units now in order to combat these Colossi. The only thing that he's lacking is some ghosts in order to try and take out those High Templar pretty quickly. So, not too much else is coming down here for the time being, just both being relatively passive, the odd little bit of aggression coming through. Those Zealots are going to be successful, managing to take down the supply depot, and that's just a little bit of damage. Not a cost-effective trade, but only minerals lost. Zealots now, and a single DT, going to be taking a quick little peek at this base that's going to try and land. Boombox just blocking that landing. Remember, there is a Dark Templar there, ready just to try and stop anything that could be coming through. So, this can't land, obviously, because of Dark Templar, just chilling there, forcing another scan, forcing most of the army to come back, and this has opened up the third base to a huge amount of damage from 2 Zealots and 2 Dark Templar. So many SCVs getting slaughtered there, and generally, this has just been some good play by Boombox, trying to be as irritating as possible, bringing in the harassment, pulling Distan's army around. Now the 4th base, some Zealots, they're coming in, they're getting some good damage out as well. More and more SCVs dying. Distan is really being pulled apart. And losing these Zealots, they're not a problem for Boombox, because he's actually wanting to free up supply, because he's got still 22 Zealots on the field, in order to pump out more things like Tempest and those real late game, hard hitting units. So waiting to see exactly what Boombox is going to try and throw out at the moment. But it's really up to Distan to actually get some counter damage down, because if he sits where he is at the moment at 47 workers compared to the 71 probes the Boombox has, the 5 bases of Boombox, he's not going to fare too well. A couple of Zealots and 2 DTs making their way forward, but these Marines just getting killed off by the Zealots very quickly. Distan moving through the center of the map though, going to be trying to take out a couple of these pylons, but is he taking too many losses at home to justify this cost? A lone Zealot getting a magical number of kills here. 6 workers already taken down because this army is on hold position. Nice storms coming out. A Colossus gets very low on HP, but it's these Tempests that are going to be really scary. Their range is just terrifying, and it really isn't something that you want to be having to face off against. The Vikings, they'll do very well up against these Tempests though, as we're seeing now. The High Templar really have to start getting some good storms onto the Vikings in order to keep this alive, especially since the Stalker count isn't that high, but there's some very big storms coming now from Boombox. He's also got these 2 Dark Templar weighing at the back. The Vikings now getting picked apart as they do stray a little bit out of the path of the rest of the army, allowing the Stalkers to get underneath them and just start dealing some good damage. The Viking count is now down to 4, so 1 Viking per Colossus, not the ideal number you'd be looking for. The Ghost Academy though, that's on its way out from Distan, and if Distan gets that Ghost Academy and gets a couple of ghosts out, he's going to have the EMPs and snipes needed to deal with the High Templar. But again, Stalkers just harassing into this 4th base. Distan's work count has lost 51 brave souls from its rankings, and with that, Distan's economy isn't really looking too solid. Boombox now massively ahead in both mineral and gas income. But Distan, he's still got a solid bank, and he needs to be spending that as efficiently as he can, especially those minerals. Getting out 6 ghosts at a time is going to help him a lot. Just can he really do much with this when Boombox has got such a potent late game composition? Both of these two being so incredibly passive at the moment. Boombox just happy to sit back and trade blows with his opponent, knowing that for the most part he's trading more effectively. But Boombox, nope, he's not actually engaging. He's just going to go and take a 6th base now, and of course with his 6th base coming up, just edges ever closer to Distan. These 2 bases ridiculously close to each other, and with the Tempest in such a nice position, it can slowly get chipped away up. So a scan being utilised now by Distan, just trying to get a good gauge on where this Protoss army is. A couple of time warps being used there, so the army can position itself up towards the third. This could be a very strong choke now. The Colossi getting a huge amount of damage down, using those two starports as an artificial choke that Distan built for himself, allowing those storms to get miraculously huge hits down on so much of the infantry. The Tempest tearing through those Vikings, the Colossi ripping through all of that infantry. And yeah, that is looking very, very good now for Boombox, who continues pushing forward. Boombox up now by 20 army supply, but a huge amount of worker supply. And Distan's bank no longer looking like it's going to be enough to keep him going for much longer. If this fourth base goes down, which I'm really expecting it will with so many Tempests there, Distan is going to be running into some problems. He's using those SCVs to repair up quickly, which is a really good move by him, but with just so many units flooding in, there's no choice. Distan, he loses that base, and with it, loses a lot of his income. A lot more of his SCVs also die. A new attempt at a fourth, though, coming down on the right here. There is a couple of pylons around, but I don't believe that Boombox has anything that could see that this base is being attempted to be secured. Doesn't really matter, though, because Boombox, he's pushing through the middle of the map. He's aiming to end out this game with slow, steady pressure. Gradually just wearing away at this Terran army, knowing that he doesn't have the income in order to hold on to this. A single Dark Templar, two Dark Templar, having a bit of a field day here. Gonna force a lift of the new fourth base, meaning that the income, yet again for Distan, is looking pretty poor. He's only got, he's mining about 300, 400 minerals a minute and the same gas. Well under what he'd ideally want. His natural base is nearly mined out too, but we've got big engagement now outside the third base of Distan. Those storms are epic, and as such, lots of this infantry gets torn apart. The Colossi now continuing on with some great damage, a few AMPs knocking the shields out of those Stalkers. The High Templar as well, suiciding in. Gonna become a couple of Archons just because those EMPs shredded them so quickly. But for the most part, that was a brilliant trade for Boombox. He's now sitting at roughly double the army supply of his opponent and over double the overall supply of his opponent. 70 to 30 workers, and GG well played is called. Boombox is going to take game number 1 of this best of 3.